Sometimes evil doesn't knock. It strolls up your driveway wearing a fake badge and a smug smile. Noah and Alina Wright had finally found their slice of peace. Tucked at the edge of a quiet, sun-dappled cul-de-sac in Pine Grove Estates, their new home promised everything they had ever wanted: safety, space, and silence. The kind of place where kids rode bikes until sundown and neighbors waved over white picket fences. After years of city chaos and endless apartment walls, it felt like a dream. For the first few weeks, everything was exactly that: a dream. Noah, a systems analyst who worked remotely, spent his mornings on the back patio with his coffee, soaking in the birdsong. Alina, a landscape photographer with a steel spine under her warm smile, had already planted a rose garden. Even their golden retriever, Max, seemed to sigh with relief every time he bounded across the dewy lawn. The house wasn't just beautiful, it was a reset, a chance to breathe. But then, the letters started. At first they were just minor annoyances. An unmarked envelope slipped under the door. A typed warning: "Your lawn must be maintained per HOA Code 17.31. That was odd. Noah had read every page of the purchase agreement. There was no HOA. He brushed it off as a joke. Alina wasn't laughing. "I don't like this," she said one night, watching headlights crawl slowly down their street from behind the curtains. "That car's circled twice now. Same one yesterday." Noah tried to reassure her, but something about the chill in her voice unsettled him. Alina wasn't the paranoid type. Her instincts, honed through years of wilderness photography and tough solo travel, were rarely wrong. Then the visits began. Men with clipboards and vests bearing no clear insignia. They knocked during the day, always when Noah was in a meeting. Alina answered once. Only once. The man's tone was aggressive, almost hostile. He claimed to represent the HOA and handed her a fine for excess garden decor. It was laughable, except it wasn't. Noah reported it to the county. They confirmed it. Pine Grove Estates had no registered homeowners association. So who were these men? And more importantly, what did they want? Whatever peace they thought they'd found in Pine Grove, it was starting to unravel, and something told Alina they were being watched. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. All right, let's keep going. By the second week, the letters became a pattern. Typed, unsigned, stuffed into their mailbox with no return address. Always folded. Perfectly, always worded like law. You are in violation of HOA Ordinance 5.9, unauthorized flower beds. Warning: fence paint color does not meet community standards. Noah stood in the kitchen holding the latest one while Alina paced. There's no header, no official stamp, no contact number. Who sends something like this? Someone pretending to be something they're not, Alina muttered, pulling up the county property site on her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Look, I knew it. Nothing listed. No HOA registered for Pine Grove. 0 corporate filings, no board, no manager. This place is off-grid. Noah leaned in, unsettled. Then who the hell are these people? The next day, they got a visit. 2 men in navy polo shirts and khakis pulled up in a white SUV with tinted windows. The vehicle had a magnetic logo that simply said Pine Grove Community Compliance. It looked official enough at first glance, but something felt off. Too generic. Too clean. Alina, against her better judgment, opened the door halfway. "Can I help you?" One of the men, tall with a thick neck and mirrored sunglasses, didn't bother smiling. "We've received multiple complaints. Unapproved structures. In your backyard. You'll need to remove them." Alina blinked. "What structures?" "Gazebo. Birdbath. Non-compliant pergola design." Noah stood behind her now, catching the tail end of the exchange. There's no HOA here. We checked with the county. The man's mouth twisted, almost amused. We enforce community standards, not county law. We'll be back for follow-up. Then, without another word, they turned and left. Noah watched. The SUV crawl down the street, stop in front of another house, then idle for nearly 10 minutes before driving off. He stared at the license plate. No state insignia. Just a strange vanity tag. PCU 007. Did you see the way he looked at me? Alina said quietly, her voice edged with unease. Like he wasn't warning me. He was marking me. That night they installed motion lights. Noah reviewed footage from their doorbell cam and saw the SUV had driven by again. At 2:17 a.m., lights off, rolling slow. The next morning, a fresh note was jammed between their front door and frame. Non-compliance leads to escalation. You've been warned. Alina didn't speak as she read it. She folded it, calmly, precisely. But in her eyes, there was fire. And Noah knew. They weren't dealing with nosy neighbors anymore. They were being hunted. It started with the noise, a loud, sharp knock at the front door while Noah was on a client call. He sprinted downstairs, only to find a bright orange citation taped to the glass. $500 fine, illegal plant removal, code 8.4. He stared at the wording. Illegal plant removal? Alina had trimmed the lavender bushes the day before. That was it. That afternoon, a second notice appeared. This one scrawled in thick black marker and taped to the garage. Compliance deadline missed. Next time, penalties will escalate. Noah's stomach tightened. He ripped it down and stuffed it in the trash. They weren't just bluffing anymore. They were baiting them. Each day brought something new. A bogus fine for unsanctioned wind. Chimes. A warning about visible trash cans when their bins were sealed and stored properly. They were being targeted. It was organized harassment, and it wasn't random. It was personal. Especially against Alina. Noah started noticing the pattern. The SUV always showed up between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. when he was in meetings or running errands. They never came when he was outside. Only when Alina was alone. One afternoon she called him mid-panic, her voice trembling but restrained. They were in the backyard, both of them. Said they were inspecting property line violations. I told them to leave and they just stared. You call the sheriff? Noah asked, already grabbing his keys. I did. They said unless they're physically threatening or trespassing, they can't intervene. And get this, those men aren't in the system. No names, no licenses, nothing. When Noah got home, he found Alina on the porch, clutching her camera. They left something, she said. Taped to the front door was a printed photo of Alina, taken through the window while she was folding laundry. The angle was high, like someone had used a drone or climbed a tree. Beneath it was a handwritten message. Your non-compliance is being recorded. That night, Alina slept with a baseball bat beside the bed. Max, their dog, paced the hallway. And Noah? He stared out the dark window, watching for shadows that didn't belong. The following morning, he found the tires on his truck slashed. Not all four, just two. Enough to inconvenience, not enough to alarm the police. It was a message. A game. And the worst part? They hadn't even seen what escalation really meant yet. But Alina was done being hunted. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday. Alina was in the backyard, pruning the overgrown rose bushes, her earbuds in, listening to a podcast about survival photography in remote regions. Max was lounging under the porch swing, eyes half closed in the morning sun. Peaceful. Quiet. Then she felt it. That eerie, primal sense of being watched. When she turned, two men stood inside the gate. Not on the sidewalk, not on the path. Inside. The yard. One of them she recognized. The thick-necked one with the smug sunglasses. But this time he wasn't wearing the casual polo. He was in full black tactical gear, Kevlar vest, sidearm holstered, but unsnapped. The other man, taller, bearded, was openly holding a short-barreled shotgun pointed downward, but ready. Alina froze, calmly removed her earbuds. "You're trespassing," she said, voice level. Her fingers didn't tremble, though her heart jackhammered in her chest. "Final warning," Thickneck said, stepping forward. "You've ignored every directive. This is your last chance to comply." "Comply with what?" she replied, standing her ground. "There's no HOA. There's no legal authority. You're just thugs in costume." The shotgun man lifted the barrel slightly, not at her, but enough to send a message. Max growled low, hackles rising. Thickneck's eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Alina. "This doesn't have to escalate, but it will. We protect this neighborhood's interests. You're disrupting that balance." "You mean not letting myself be bullied?" she snapped. "That's what's throwing off." "Your balance?" They didn't answer. Instead, the bearded one walked toward the porch slowly, deliberately, and peeled a sticker off a roll he pulled from his vest. He slapped it on the front window, right above Max's water bowl. In thick red block letters, it read, "Property flagged. Hostile resident. Level 2. Escalation." Then, without a word, both men turned and left. No threats, no shouting, just silent intimidation. Alina stood motionless for nearly a minute. Her phone was still on the garden table. She picked it up, hands now visibly shaking, and hit speed dial. Noah answered on the first ring. "I'm on, my way," he said before she could even explain. By the time he got home, they were gone. But so was the peaceful illusion of their sanctuary. Alina handed him the sticker. Her voice was flat. "They pulled a gun on me, Noah. In our yard. While I was gardening." Noah couldn't speak. He just stared at the label. Level 2 escalation. He knew what that meant. There were more levels, and they'd just been promoted to something far more dangerous. 3 hours after the gun incident, Noah made the call he never thought he'd need to make. He'd met Alina's father twice. Once, at their wedding, once for a Thanksgiving dinner, and both times the man had been polite, quiet, and intensely unreadable. There was something about his posture, the way he didn't blink much, how he always seemed to be scanning corners even while carving turkey. Now, as Noah stood at the edge of his driveway, still staring at the faded tire marks where the fake enforcers had parked, he made the call. "Paul," he said when the man answered. "It's Noah. I think we need you here. It's serious." There was a pause. No questions, no hesitation. Just a quiet, measured response. "I'll be there by nightfall." When Paul arrived, it was without ceremony. A matte gray truck pulled into the driveway just after sunset. The engine cut. No headlights lingered. The door opened, and out stepped a man who looked more like a retired professor than a military legend. Plaid shirt, hiking boots, old army green duffel slung casually over one shoulder. But Noah saw it right away, the way his eyes scanned the rooftops before even closing the truck door, the way he walked, grounded but light, like he never left the battlefield mentally. Alina hugged him tightly, murmured something only he could hear. He said nothing back, just nodded, eyes already locked on the camera above their neighbor's garage. It was new. It hadn't been there last week. After a quiet dinner, Paul stood on the back deck, sipping black coffee, watching the shadows move through the cul-de-sac. He didn't speak for nearly 20 minutes. Then to Noah, without, turning, "They're not amateurs." "What?" Noah stepped beside him. "They're organized. Military posture but undisciplined. Likely private sector rejects or ex-contractors playing soldier. Dangerous in short bursts, stupid over time." Alina watched from the doorway. "What do we do?" Paul finally turned, eyes cool. "We watched them back. You give me 48 hours." The next morning, he was gone before dawn. A small pair of binoculars, a notebook, and a GoPro rig left behind told them he wasn't far. And when the fake HOA SUV rolled slowly past that afternoon, two men glaring out the tinted window, Paul was nowhere in sight. But something told Noah. They were being watched too, only this time by someone they should be afraid of. Paul didn't say much that morning, just handed Noah a cup of coffee and slid a blueprint of their property across the table. The lines were clean, marked, precise. "This," he said, tapping a red X on the back fence, "is where they breach every time." Noah blinked. "You've been watching them that long?" "Long enough," Paul said simply. "Time to stop being the hunted." It started that afternoon. Paul disappeared into town and came back with duffel bags, military surplus gear, motion sensors, weatherproof trail cams, and a few things Noah didn't dare ask about. Alina just raised an eyebrow and said, "Dad, please don't get arrested." He didn't answer. He just smiled faintly and started drilling into the tree line under cover of dusk. They set up 6 motion-triggered cameras in total, 2 disguised as birdhouses, 1 mounted inside the mailbox, another buried just beneath the flower bed with a perfect angle on the gate. Each one was linked to Paul's military-grade tablet, which he guarded like a sacred relic. Then came the bait. "We need to give them a reason to come back," Paul said, laying out a fake cease and desist HOA letter on their porch. "Let them think you're folding, then make them angry again." He planted signs. Deliberately fake violations, unauthorized surveillance equipment installed, non-compliant garden decor, even one that said hostile flag display, HOA rule violation 4.3. "Let them think you're trying to fight back in the dumbest way," Paul muttered. "They'll bite." Meanwhile, he put Noah through what he casually called a crash course in staying alive. Every morning started with calisthenics, drills in spatial awareness, how to move quietly, how to identify threats without giving away your eyes. Noah was clumsy at first, but determination kicked in fast, especially with Alina watching from the kitchen window. One night, as they sat on the porch, Paul leaned over and handed Noah a small item wrapped in cloth. "A taser. Just in case," he said. Noah nodded, the weight of the situation fully settling on him. And just when the trap was ready, when everything had been planted, watched, baited, and prepared, the silence returned. The HOA goons hadn't shown in 2 days. Then, late one night, Paul glanced at the tablet. A red alert pulsed. "Motion," he muttered. "Back gate." He stood up slowly. Noah felt a knot tighten in his chest. "It's time," Paul whispered. The wolves took the bait. The air was unnaturally still, too quiet for a suburban street. The wind barely rustled the trees, and every creak in the floorboards sounded like a rifle crack. Noah crouched by the window, clutching the taser Paul had given him. His palms were slick. Every instinct screamed, "Stay down," but adrenaline wouldn't let him sit still. Paul was already outside, hidden in the shadows between the garage and the hedges, barely visible even on the camera feed. His eyes were locked on the back gate. Calm, focused, predator mode. Then, they came. A black SUV rolled in with its lights off, pulling halfway onto the lawn like before. 2 men got out, armed. One wore fake body armor stenciled with HOA compliance unit. The other carried a clipboard, more for intimidation than documentation. They moved with swagger. Arrogance. "Knock, knock," one sneered as they strolled toward the porch. The second man turned toward the camera mounted above the garage and sprayed something across it. Black paint. What he didn't realize was that the real cameras, the ones Paul had installed, were catching everything from 5 different angles. Inside, Noah whispered, "They're here." Alina tightened her grip on the phone. She'd already dialed. the number Paul had given her. It wasn't 911, it was direct. 20 seconds later, Paul's voice came through Noah's earpiece. "Stand down, let them talk. We've got eyes and backup en route." The two fake enforcers stood at the door, barking threats. "You've violated HOA protocol. This is your final warning. Next time, it won't be so civil." Suddenly, a third figure emerged from the shadows. Another enforcer, armed and flanking the house from the side. That was the move Paul had been waiting for. He spoke a single word into his comm. Now. It happened fast. Spotlights from unmarked vehicles lit up the entire street. Red and blue strobes flared to life as real law. Enforcement officers poured in, local deputies, followed by two suits from a federal agency that didn't wear labels. Hands in the air. "Drop the weapons!" Chaos exploded. The fake HOA enforcers spun in panic, weapons halfway raised before they realized they were hopelessly outnumbered. One ran. He didn't make it far, tackled on the lawn by a K9 unit. Another dropped his gun and hit the ground face first. Paul emerged calmly from the dark, nodding toward the lead federal agent. "Told you they'd show," he said. The agent nodded back. "We've been building a case. You just gave us the missing piece." Noah stood in stunned silence as the enforcers were cuffed and dragged off, faces pale, threats forgotten. The nightmare was over, or so they thought, because one face was missing from the takedown, and Paul's expression said he knew it. The fake HOA enforcers were gone, but the tension didn't immediately lift. Not for Noah, not for Alina, not for anyone in the neighborhood. The driveway was full of police vehicles, federal agents bustling around, taking statements, marking evidence. The front yard, once a battlefield of threats and intimidation, was now silent. The only sound was the dull hum of an officer's radio, the occasional bark from the K9 unit, and the quiet murmur of neighbors whispering behind their curtains. Noah stood in the doorway, staring at the police activity. His knuckles were white from gripping the frame. Alina stood beside him, her eyes scanning the street. The night that had begun in chaos was ending in what felt like a hollow calm. "They'll be gone by morning," Paul said from behind them, his voice deep, quiet, unwavering. He hadn't moved. From his position at the base of the driveway, arms crossed, eyes locked on the commotion, like a man who'd seen it all before. "They'll be more than gone," a federal agent said, approaching them. He handed over a folder. "We've got full confessions. We've been tracking this group for months. They've been extorting people across the state, posing as HOA enforcers, stealing, and terrorizing anyone who didn't comply." Alina shivered, but Noah felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was it. It was finally over. "You did good," the agent said to Paul, before walking off to organize the last of the arrests. A few more officers followed behind, handcuffing the remaining fake enforcers as they shuffled toward the squad cars. Paul remained still, his expression unreadable. His mission was complete, but there was no satisfaction in his eyes. No smugness, just a quiet resolve. "Are you okay?" Alina whispered, taking his arm. Paul turned to her, his gaze intense but calm. "This isn't about you two anymore," he said softly. "It's about everyone who's too afraid to speak up." Noah's chest tightened at his words. "What do you mean?" Paul met his gaze with a long, measured look before answering. "This wasn't just for you. This neighborhood, it needed someone to stand up. Too many people bend when they shouldn't. They get scared of threats, scared of what might happen if they push back." Noah nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what Paul was saying. "So what now?" Paul turned to the scene unfolding in front of them. The squad cars, the flashing lights, the end of an era of fear. Now you live free. And just as quickly as he'd arrived, Paul turned and began walking away. Noah and Alina watched him disappear into the night, his presence already becoming a distant memory. But the message he left behind lingered. Sometimes you have to fight for the peace you deserve. As the fake HOA was dismantled and justice was served, a new chapter began for the neighborhood and for Noah and Alina. They could finally breathe easy, their home and their future reclaimed. And for the first time in a long while, Noah smiled. A small, hard-earned smile. The nightmare was over, but he knew deep down, he'd never forget the lesson Paul had taught him. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the next part, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. See you in the next one. Your support means the world.